don't change your dial. This is not Dancing with the Stars, although these two would do quite well on that show. I'm Ed Codi. This is the Coaches Roundtable, and welcome our guests from Perform Physical Therapy in Mars, PA. To my far right, Dr. Carly Greenawalt. To my immediate right, Dr. Jessica Davis. I know you two would do well on Dancing with the Stars, I'm sure.
I think she would.
Yeah.
I don't know about me.
Too.
Well, we're here today. We want to talk about sports-related injuries, and I want to start with the big one, and that's concussions. And just what is the definition for concussion? Because there's so many different thoughts out there about it.
Well, the definition has changed over the years. So back in the 60s, the definition of a concussion was if you passed out for more than 5 minutes. It has significantly changed, though. The most recent definition is if you have a headache, any dizziness, nausea, vomiting, for even a short period of time, you need to get evaluated for a concussion.
And the other misconception is you have to strike your head to get a concussion, and that's not true. Is that right?
That's correct. So it's almost, think of that brain kind of in the system, and any kind of shaking, kind of like an egg. So that shaking is really what the concussion is. So if it's enough of a force of that brain shaking, then that will cause the concussive symptoms.
So today there's much more awareness of it. I came from an era when I played high school and college football that, okay, whatever you had, take 2 aspirin and put some analgesic balm on it. And pretty much of it was ignored. I don't know if I ever had one or not. I only remember 2 players, one in high school, one in college, who missed games because of concussion. So they're much more careful today about it, are they not?
Yes.
They are, but what's interesting is when you look at the research, a lot of times most people actually don't know the most recent definition of the concussion. So when we talk to athletes, this research study they looked at, they asked them how many concussive episodes they had prior, and then they gave them that definition, and some of them doubled the amount of concussions that they self-reported because of the new definition.
And when you say that, I hear, for example, because you work with people and how you treat them for concussion, so you hear players so-and-so, like Kenny Pickett of the Steelers, he's had, 3 concussions. So he's concussed on Sunday. Monday, they say he's in concussion protocol. Oh, Friday, he's okay and ready to play. Does that happen that fast? 4 or 5 days, they ready to play again?
So average return to play is actually within the first week.
Yes.
So typically within a week, most concussive symptoms can go back to baseline.
Okay.
And then it does vary within the individual and athlete. And then they have special tests that they can now determine that are scientific and give us objective data of, is this athlete ready to return to play?
And accumulative concussions, like Pickett's had 3, and all the stuff about CTE, which they can't really determine until after the person has died. I think there was 375 tested NFL former athletes, football players, and 350 of them had the CTE. So what do you say to someone like that? You've had 3 concussions already. You're only 26 years old. What's that say for the future about this CTE? Which I have it written down here, the pronunciation of it, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
So I would say we don't have enough information on that yet, because we're still looking at brains from people who didn't go through concussion protocols, that didn't have full healing towards the end. So I think give it 10 years, maybe 15 years, and we'll know more of an answer to that question. Because I'm sure, like you said, back in when you played, you didn't go through a concussion protocol. You probably played with concussions. Whereas nowadays, with this awareness, does it make a difference if we're allowing them to fully heal before they go back to playing?
All right, football gets all the notoriety about concussions, but tell me about some of the other sports that they don't talk about, that people are surprised to know, oh, concussions in that sport?
Soccer is one, right? Just heading the ball, or even hitting an athlete. Obviously, hockey would be another.
Horseback riding,
yes.
And that's one where people aren't evaluated. They fall off, they have a helmet on, but again, like Dr. Davis said, nothing prevents movement of that brain in the skull vault. So a lot of times equestrians have it and still continue riding.
Well, isn't soccer in the lower levels now, they prohibit the heading of the ball?
Correct. So that's been a positive change, absolutely.
And a lot of girls get concussed.
Yes.
More
Yes.
common in females than males, actually, and they link that to a possibility of the neck not being as strong in
Mhm.
females compared to males.
And I've done, we love to do volleyball games, and not just the boys, but the girls can spike that ball at a velocity. And sometimes I see girls and guys get hit in the head with a full shot. I'm sure there are concussions as a result of that.
And that's where it goes into the education. So if you have your athletes educated on the signs and symptoms for themselves, but also having parents, coaches, athletic trainers available for that quick evaluation is critical, so that they can identify, okay, this athlete doesn't look right, or knowing the signs and symptoms to take an athlete to the emergency room, that this is a potentially dangerous situation, they need to be evaluated.
So what's the treatment for concussion? If you get a young player, anyone in particular with concussion, what's the treatment for it?
It's changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite
Everything's
dramatically.
changed, yeah.
But for the good.
So it used to be you would go on bed rest, and they encouraged you to, total active rest. Now it's active rehab. So they actually want you to start exercising below your symptom threshold right out of the gate. And what that does is that allows the brain to actually get rid of the metabolic disturbance that is happening following the concussion.
Yeah.
I know when I had mine, when I was rear-ended leaving community college, that all of it, I didn't think I had one right away, but about 2 hours later, everything got foggy. Then I went to see the Dr. Kelly down at Allegheny General, and I went on this like eating binge, which he told me was not unusual. And then certain noises, like I don't want to mention the Pittsburgh newscaster, I could not stand to hear her voice. I had to turn it off. Now, why was all that happening?
So your brain has had this, they call it a software problem, so not a hardware problem, which was, I think, a neat definition. So it's basically you get this cascade of, chemical change that is occurring in the brain, which then causes increased sensitivities to light, sound, and you can't forget emotion. So all of a sudden you might cry for no reason, or get angry. So you can have emotional changes.
I was eating a whole package of crackers with butter, and he told me don't worry about it, just eat it. It was just whatever my brain was doing to heal itself or processing the whole thing.
So interesting you say butter, because the new research is really looking into nutrition, and what they're finding is like a high fat diet is actually protective to the brain.
Neuroprotective.
Maybe my brain was telling me something.
Yeah.
Hey, there's some other injuries like made famous recently with Aaron Rodgers with his Achilles. He had surgery. Andrew McCutcheon had a partial tear. He did not have surgery. How common are these Achilles injuries? Is it not your strongest tendon in the body, the Achilles? What's happening with all these ruptured Achilles tendons?
I mean, when you think of a tendon, right, you think of the fibers are aligned the same way, and that's good for a protective effect. But if you have the right amount of force, it actually has a rapid deficiency. But what we're knowing now is that the more you load your tendon properly, it makes it more resilient. So then that goes into the question of, are we loading at the proper rate?
Yeah.
And how do you strengthen it and prevent it?
So the big thing for tendons is eccentric loading. So an eccentric contraction is when the muscle is contracting in a lengthened state. So you want to focus on those eccentric contractions, because usually when an Achilles tendon tears, it's a rapid eccentric contraction that the tendon is not able to handle. So the more we train in that eccentric type of contractions, the better off we're going to be, the more protected we're going to be.
Is there a similarity between tearing an Achilles? I see Matthew Judon, the outside linebacker for New England, ruptured his bicep, tore it. He had to have immediate surgery. Is there tendons in both? Is there a correlation there between the two?
I mean, it's still a tendon, so it's still that some force exceeded the capability of the tendon. If you look at rehab time, though, I would say an Achilles tendon would take a lot longer to rehab. You're looking at 11 to 12 months in a professional athlete before they even are returned to play, whereas a bicep's going to heal a lot quicker.
So Aaron Rodgers is 39. He had the surgery. He has his age factor into his
Yes.
rehab with this too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as we age, unfortunately, we lose our tissue resilience. But the new literature that's supporting more and more that our older adults in general and athletes need to load appropriately, because the more stimulus you give a tissue, what we're finding is that it actually facilitates more of those fibers to align properly and make for a more resilient tendon. And so that tendon can face those forces and supersede that so they don't rupture.
So finally, let me ask you: is there a difference in sports-related injuries when it comes to boys and girls, men and women? Or are we? I just read something recently that Achilles tears are common in the NBA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball's number one for Achilles.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah. I mean, so sports can be a factor. What type of sport? I mean, again, it comes down to that rapid deceleration phase. So, you're jumping up and then landing rapidly and then changing positions as well. But of course, then there are gender differences that we're exploring. For example, ACL is a good one that you can think of, the concerning, females versus males, and they're studying, is it an anatomical variant, or there's a lot of variability too with, ligamentous laxity in the female athlete at certain times in their menstrual cycle. They're more vulnerable. They have more ligamentous laxity. And so if they don't have that adequate training and load to compensate for that ligamentous laxity, then they're in a more susceptible state.
So what do you say? I know some parents say, I don't want my son playing football because of the concussion issue. And I've said to some, well, there are concussion issues in every sport and injuries related. What would you say to them?
Well, I can speak for that because I had one of my children, I had that internal conflict too,
Right.
who wanted to play football his senior year and he had never played before. But knowing what I know, the fact is that there are concussions in anything that we can do. You mentioned a car accident, we're susceptible. So, think about, we're actually very trained at identifying it and working on prevention. And so I would say as long as they're strong and, relatively athletic and can handle that, then,
Well, finally, I'm going to ask you something I read recently about BMI, body mass index, and it's totally a different interpretation from in terms of being in shape and conditioning. And so it doesn't seem to apply anymore.
Yeah, well, with BMI, the problem with BMI is it doesn't take into account skeletal muscle mass. So a lot of times, all it takes into is your height and your weight, and they want you to fall into that category. But muscle is always going to weigh more than fat. So, for example, according to a BMI, I am obese because of the amount of muscle mass I have.
That'd be hard to believe that you are. You're looking fit and in shape. So now you don't worry about that anymore, because you see now today, you see 15, 16-year-old kids that weigh 280, 290 pounds. They're big kids today playing high school football. I'm not about college, I'm talking about high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to take in consideration how much muscle they have. Yeah, and one of the variables they're looking into that still stands true is, your relative abdomen, girth, and that is still showing predictive, validity for blood pressure and heart disease and diabetes. But the BMI is not proving that it's as accurate as we think.
I can go on with you too for an hour or more talking about all this. Very fascinating, great work that you two do. I can attest to it myself. You've kept me moving all these years. Thanks for coming in, spending time with us. Really enjoy it.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I'll be back with two real dancing stalwarts, Elle and George.
My name is Matt Romeo. I've been at Armstrong for almost 9 years now. What I love most about my role as a lead tech is making a difference in my techs that I'm looking after, making a difference in their lives. I make sure that on their jobs, they have the help that they will need. There are so many opportunities to advance in this company. The training has been absolutely first class. Armstrong cares about our customers getting installed and serviced, but they mostly care about us going home at the end of the day.
I am back, joined to my right by the Swami George Abraham, to my left, the Tiger Albert Campman. Guys, having these doctors on, Dr. Davis and Dr. Greenwald, talking about sports injuries. I think when we played, we were in a stone age, because if you had a bad knee, the coach said, I'll take a couple aspirin, throw some analgesic balm on it. Coach, my head hurts. Put some analgesic balm in your helmet, take a couple aspirin.
Jules tells a story. He did something to his arm, and he was so much pain, he put atomic bomb on it, and he held it up the window on the way home in the car because it was so hot.
I mean, It was back then, you
Oh,
know,
no.
you just didn't
No.
you didn't say anything. I remember in a tackling drill, I get kicked in the head, and I was a little dazed, and the coach said, "All right, get off the field so we can continue this drill." Not,
Oh,
are
no.
you okay?
No.
That's just the way it was in those days.
No. And they didn't have all the investigative ways to find out what was wrong. You know, like if it wasn't something sticking out, that was now today they get an MRI of the tissue or what.
And you know, in high school, I remember one player who had a concussion. He missed the game. In college, our middle linebacker at the Rock, he had a concussion. He missed the game. Other than that, you remember many kids you played with that had concussions
I-
and missed games?
I had one.
I remember
Yeah,
zero.
It was terrible.
Zero. I don't remember one. I don't remember one.
My injuries, I know my sophomore year, I was scrimmaging New Kent. I got a tooth knocked out that replaced. And then my junior year, we're playing Newcastle. Remember Dan Spanish?
Mm-hmm.
I went to tackle him. His cleat come off. He spiked me in the hand, ripped. You could see the bones. You know what the doctor did in the sideline? He put a sponge on top and threw some tape over it. You went back into play. So we go up to the emergency room after. He said, "I'll see you up there. You don't need any Novocaine." Just sewed me.
Oh,
It sewed me
no.
right up. And then
No.
you know, at the Rock, we're playing in Edinburgh, and a play's over, and I'm in the huddle, and my buddy, the outside linebacker, he says, "Look at your leg." I said, "What about it?" I looked down, my sock's half red, half white. Here, the cleat came off, and he punctured me through the calf. You know, I didn't feel a thing until he told me about it.
wow. Then
Then
you thought about it.
the
Yeah.
officials come over and said, "You got to leave the, you have to
Absolutely.
leave the game." So,
Absolutely.
what about you? What was any injuries that you
No,
sustained?
just a concussion, just that.
Just-
And I didn't even. I remember they wouldn't let you go to sleep. That back in the day, they
Yeah.
made you stay up, which I don't know if they still do that.
But she says it changed now. They want to keep you moving
Well, there you go.
with concussions.
There you go.
Albert, anything
Back injury, major back injury in football.
from
And I was in the
Youngstown?
hospital, yeah, for a couple days.
Yeah,
Broke some transverse
Ooh.
processes
on a tackle.
on a interception. Came down to somebody's knee. Cracked the knee. I bent over the knee.
Yeah. Now, I asked them about the Achilles, and that's the most difficult injury to overcome. You know what sport has the most Achilles injuries? Basketball,
Wonder why.
not football. Jumping and going up the NBA.
Yeah, I'm not
Didn't
shocked.
Kobe Bryant have
Kobe
it?
had it, yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not shocked about that.
Yeah. Now,
You know what I think? This is going to sound strange. I think the shoes are better. Like something has to. Like we played in canvas shoes, so you sprained your ankle, pretty much commonplace.
yeah.
Now these shoes are so stinking good. I think something else goes. Achilles knee, something. Remember how many ankles we used to have?
Always.
Yeah, and then I mentioned about Matt Judon at the Patriots. He tore his bicep,
Oh,
and he needs to have surgery. But they said that you can come back faster from that than you will be from Achilles heel. And they said Aaron Rodgers, he has a long road. He's 39, tore that. The Achilles is the biggest and strongest tendon in your body. I did
it's the
not know
longest
that.
one, I think.
Is it the
I
longest
think
one
it goes
too?
from behind the leg all the way to your foot.
Yeah, I know a guy, and this is years ago in the wintertime, he's helping someone, their car was stuck in the ice. He went to push it, and here that Achilles
Yeah,
rolled
I
up
can-
his
I
back.
can hear it.
His calf was never the same after
Mm-mm.
that. So you have to warm it up beforehand, and I don't know who thinks about that. I got to warm up my Achilles before I start playing. You know, normally
You know
get
who?
the blood flow.
You know
in
who?
that.
Somebody got hurt before. The
Pro-
regular
probably.
guys, don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Then we talked about football gets all the notoriety for concussions, but there are more concussions with soccer. And girls get a lot of concussions, not to mention field hockey, wrestling, lacrosse, and other sports like that. And we know from volleyball, you get hit in the head with one of those spikes, that has to cause a concussion.
We had one night. Remember that girl got hit right in the front of the head with it. I mean, a bullet.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
So, and we talked about, the big issue in the CTE, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the brain disease. They tested 375 former NFL players, and 350 of them had it. And part of this is you can't do anything to really determine the disease until after they're dead,
Yeah.
and then they do the autopsies.
Right.
They hit with their heads every play. You know,
Yeah.
that's a lineman every play. They try to use their head, but they end up hitting their heads. There's no way around it.
And so I asked them about, how does this, now they can't say definitively, but like Kenny Pickett's had 3 concussions already. He's 26. So your susceptibility to getting another one, and then the treatment, and then the possibility of prolonged impairment, it increases. It's something, how many can the linebacker, Junior Seau?
And how about the boxers? Some of those guys, they get to the point they've been hitting the head. So it happened in Matt would tell you, UFC, this Ken Shamrock, he got hit in the head so many times that if you grazed him, he went out.
Dave Dorson of the Bears, all pro, he died young from it. And Junior Seau,
Yeah.
part of the problem, he killed himself.
Right. Oh, that was the problem. Yes.
Yeah.
There was a former player for the San Diego Chargers, and I can't remember exactly he was in his 50s, and he started to show signs of dementia. His wife went into the bathroom one day, and he was didn't do it, getting ready to brush his teeth with his razor blade.
Wow.
And he would shave in the morning. 15 minutes later, be back in shaving again because he forgot that he did it.
One guy did it he was planting some flowers or something, and his wife said, you need to do that on the other side where the sun is. So next day she goes out, he was right back there.
Yeah.
Marty Schottenheimer, I have to go to the bathroom with him.
Morning.
Yeah.
It happened to Rip Angle, the former Penn State coach, too. Same thing with
Dean
him.
Smith?
So, pardon me?
Dean Smith?
Dean Smith, yeah. So what they're doing today in terms of physical therapy, they're much more vigilant in what they're doing, and I think it's great. I know some people say, "Oh, there are too many kids. They get a concussion, they hold them out too long." No, if that's a concussion, and it's possible. They said if you're diagnosed, say an NFL player on a Sunday, it's possible within 5 or 6 days for you to be out of a concussion protocol and be ready to play.
They have the testing down pat.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see that guy got rough with a doctor the other day. They got upset with him, but they didn't fine him.
Adams, I saw that.
They have a guy there, an
Seattle.
independent guy. He told him, he said, "You're done." And he didn't like that.
Well, let's move on and talk a little bit here. I've been waiting to talk about the Pirates, 76 and 86, 14 more wins than they had last year. Is this significant? Are we being teased, or is this portend the future?
You heard what I said. If Skeens ends up being the pitcher that they, as a number 1 pick, supposed to be in 2025, they'll be in the playoffs. I said, I don't know. I'm not saying next year.
Right.
2 years from now, they are a really good team on the field. Their team on the field's good.
And
if they get a dominant pitcher and Keller, and the owner's already said he's putting $30 million in to get another pitcher.
Can he get 2?
What? Maybe get 2. I'd rather get one really good one.
Yeah,
That's what I'd rather
I
get one.
got some names down here. We're going to go. Hey, this is the first time in over 20 years they finished ahead of the Cardinals.
Yes.
That's the problem, though. The league's good. Cincinnati is young and good. Cubs young and good, and Milwaukee has good pitching. So they got to overcome some really good teams.
Cincy and the Cubs are younger than the Pirates.
Yeah, that's
and
what
the
I'm saying.
Brewers are right there with them. What the Brewers have made the playoffs 5 out of the last 7
The only trouble
years.
with the Cubs in St. Louis is they'll spend.
They'll spend.
Yeah.
And okay, so going to what he said, I 2 more starting pitchers. Let's say you have Keller, Skeens. You bring Oviedo back as a starter too.
Should. He's pitched really good.
Okay. So and here's what I'm saying: go for another lefty in a bullpen to complement Bednar. They need a first baseman and an everyday right fielder. Is Davis the answer to right field? I don't know.
He has to be.
I
He
see
has to be. He's good.
Hayes at third, Cruz back at short. I like Triolo at second base.
I like
He batted
Figueroa. I like
300.
Figueroa better.
Well, I like the batting of Triolo. He hit around 300 coming back. Now the question is, what do you do with first base?
Well, that's one you can sign though. I mean, you don't need.
You know who's available?
Like Santana. You understand? He was good when he
They
played.
were
with them.
talking about bringing him back.
Why wouldn't you bring him back? Okay. Yes.
20 homers?
Yes.
Cody Bellinger is available.
Too much.
320.
Too much money.
See, when you say too much, I don't agree with that. The Pirates have the money to do it. But and the question is, do you want a pennant winner or do you not? Do you want to take that next step? For example, here's some available free agents. Now, I like what Sawinski did at the end of the year. If he could just hit 250 with his power, that would be fantastic.
You get Cruz back as the key, and Cruz, because Cruz looks like an all-star, and all of a sudden Swazinski doesn't have to carry the team. You know, you have to carry a team. He strikes out a lot, but if you're just one of the guys batting sixth,
He's a streak hitter.
you know, and
You're not gonna change his
And
streak.
I
hitter.
don't think you can sit a guy with 25 homers on a team like the Pirates.
No, even though he only batted 217
Yeah,
or 218.
Right.
Now, available free agents, will they sign anyone? I know you're going to say no. Here are the pitchers. Left-handed pitcher, boy, this guy would be great. Blake Snell, 14-9, 2.25 ERA, the best ERA of a starter in baseball, 234 Ks. He's finishing up a $50 million contract over 5 years. You know he's going to want a lot more.
he'll
than
be
that.
with the Dodgers. Dodgers need a pitcher. He'll be with the Dodgers.
Yeah. But I'd like to see once the Pirates say, there's our guy.
Get him.
We're going to go for him because he's going to put us over the hump. Then you got Aaron Nola, who's been around. He's durable. He never misses a start. Will he re-sign with the Phillies?
I think so.
There's Sonny Gray, 34, that had a pretty good year with
He's a
Minnesota.
good pitcher.
He's a veteran to bring in.
Oh, yeah.
Another reliable guy.
Yeah.
And how about Texas left-handed pitcher Jordan Montgomery?
Well, then the guys you're mentioning, I know you want them to spend. They're not getting them. They're not $30 million ain't going to get.
See, this lends me to believe what George said. He don't believe they'll spend the extra buck to compete and win a division title. And the left-handed reliever, I like Josh Hader from San Diego. Boy, you put him in there with Bednar. What a combination you would have with those two.
Penguin, the Pirate fans would love you.
Yeah.
You,
Hey, I want to see him.
Make your money. You're going to spend them all.
Hey, that's what the guy said the other day. He said, you're great at spending someone else's money.
He's
Yeah,
getting
well-
them all. They said Pirates got an
Okay.
all-star team now.
Okay, well, their attendance went up. They talk about all these young players. They talk about they said they're ready to compete for a division title. Well, then if you want to do that, then you go out and spend the extra. Would it hurt them to give away 2 contracts?
Yeah.
One guy for $50 million, another guy for $75 million or whatever. How would it hurt their bottom line?
Well, the bottom line is they never done it. So until they do that, I
Yeah,
won't believe it.
yeah.
Well,
Yes.
until they do it, I'm not going to believe they're going to win a division or make a World Series. That's it for us. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
High school sports, community events, all of your favorite local shows are calling the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel their home. Find out everything your neighborhood has to offer on Channel 100 or on YouTube. Spirit, town pride, local communities. This is the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel.